Welcome back into the Pig Trail Show, and welcome to another Hog Hoops Report. As always, that's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. Kevin, last week, Arkansas comes through, and we're saying, it just no SEC wins. There's just nothing going well for Arkansas. The Razorbacks get it done on Wednesday and take down Georgia. There's a little bit of spark, a little bit of hope. No Boogie Flam, but Arkansas still gets it done against the Bulldogs. Then turns around in a game that really was winnable and a game that Arkansas needed to win. The Razorbacks can't get it done against Oklahoma on Saturday. 65-62. We were talking a little bit before we hopped on here. Remarkably similar games. You get the win against Georgia and a muck it up, just slow, grind it out game, and then on Saturday against the Sooners, it doesn't go the Razorbacks' way at all.
No, and my new theme, this is my new catchphrase, put a fork in them. I don't think you can go split games at home against teams that are also in the bottom tier of the SEC after starting 0-5 and then you had LSU's down there too, and Arkansas loses on the road to the Tigers. I just don't think at 1-6, I don't see a pathway for this team to realistically find a way to get enough wins. Say 7-11 would be enough in this league, if you had enough quad ones in those 7 wins to get you on the bubble and maybe on the right side of the bubble for an at-large projection going to the SEC tournament. I just don't see a pathway for this team. After beating Georgia and staving off that 0-5 start, if you defeated Oklahoma in the next game, you've won both games back-to-back at home. You've got a little momentum. You're 2-5, and you've got an opportunity maybe to do something. It was one game a must win. I think it was. I think both games last week were must wins. Arkansas took care of the first one, not the second one. You mentioned it, eerily similar. Both grind games scored down in the 60s, 3-point margin, final margin. Arkansas trailed by double digits in both games on its home court before fighting to get back in it. And even the way it ended, I mean, you had a Due Thero breaking a tie game with 1.8 seconds left with a personal 3-0 run. And it was one of those, it was an inverted and one. He hit the free throw first, then got the putback as the time expired on the bucket for the 3-point win. And this one, his counterpart, positionally, Jalen Moore of Oklahoma, hits one of 2 free throws to break a tie game with about 1:15 left. And then he runs out in transition effectively as the horn sounds for a dunk after Nelly Davis's failed drive. So there's a lot of similarities. The only problem is what wasn't similar was the final result. Arkansas needed another win. Again, Jacob, I think this team now, it's a matter of how bad does it get. Last year's team, by the way, through 7 SEC games was 1-6 also. That team went 6-12 and finished, I think, 11th out of 14 teams. Now it's a 16-team league. Arkansas right now at 1-6 sits at 15th, all alone in 15th place. Only South Carolina 0-7 in league play is worse. And so, last year's team went 6-12. Again, I mentioned that. 2-14 is the low water mark in the SEC. That was John Pelfrey's team that didn't even start 0-5. That team started 0-4. We'll see if this team has another win in it. I'm not going to say they can't win more than one more, but I don't see a pathway. I mean, mathematically, it's there. You've got 11 more games. If Arkansas went 6-5 and had 3 or 4 quad one wins in there and some on the road, they'd have a chance really to be on that bubble. I just don't see that happening. This is not a team, we mentioned it last week. They don't look like a team that can bump along 500, win one here, lose one there, just to stack enough wins to do that. They're in big trouble in terms of that. In terms of not being the laughing stock of the SEC and arguably in the nation, they can at least win a handful of games. Somehow get to 4 or 5. It's still going to be awful because John Calipari's brand doesn't carry that kind of negative cachet in terms of, he hasn't been perfect. Wasn't perfect at Kentucky, but nothing like that. So it was talked about when he was hired. It was big news, and it'll be big news if Arkansas stays on this path through the rest of the SEC. Forget about NCAA tournament talk. Just how ugly can this get?
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I saw, I give credit where credit is due for folks being optimistic. I saw, paths to the tournament, on social media after the game yesterday. And, it's you don't want to call the season over ever, right? Because you just never know what's going to happen. But when you look at the path for this team, I don't know how you can look at that and talk tournament with a realistic look and just
Yeah.
serious look on your face. And so right now it's just about figuring out what this team is and trying to maximize what this team can be in terms of potential wins. And, we've kind of hit it over the head repeatedly for the past couple of weeks is, the Georgia Oklahoma, 2 games at home, they were so important because of what lies ahead, right? Sure, you get a week off, but obviously, you go to Lexington next. Everybody knows that. But then you stay on the road, midweek contest against Texas. They haven't been unbelievable, but winning on the road against anybody is pretty darn challenging in the SEC. Saw that when you went to LSU and you couldn't get it done, and then you come back home and there's no respite there. It's Alabama comes to Fayetteville, right? So we can talk about that over and over again. But what's disappointing for me was the fact that they came out and once again they spotted Oklahoma massive lead, right? It's 33-20 before the team seemingly wakes up at the end of the first half. And even through all of that, what was frustrating was it wasn't as if the team was flat and had no energy. And they weren't creative offensively, and that's a different conversation. But energy wise, it was there. They showed a little bit defensively. But what was disappointing for me, I'm beating around the bush here, is when Big Z hit that three to put them up 50-44. I mean, they looked poised to run away with the game. They had all the momentum. Oklahoma was flat, and then they fouled 2 3-point shooters, and from that point on, it was an atrocity of offensive basketball on both sides. The point is, Arkansas had its chance to win this game. They should have, just plain and simple. But when they went up by 6, I said, yeah, I think Arkansas is going to do it, and they just let it slip away.
Well, the phrase snatching defeat
Yeah,
from the jaws of victory. You don't see a ton of 3-point shooters fouled. It happens. I mean, it's
yeah,
common, but it's not, you don't necessarily see it every game. Arkansas had it on back-to-back
back to
defensive
back.
possessions after finally hitting a couple of threes to go up by 6. You mentioned it after being down 13. You fought your way within 4 at halftime. You built a 6-point lead and that was about 10 minutes to go. So you had a clear lane. Not to say that you weren't going to have some adversity, but you had a clear lane to just play clean
Mhm.
basketball and let the chips fall where they may. When you're gifting teams, it's not just that you gifted a team on back-to-back possessions 6 free throws. This is an elite free throw shooting team at over 80% coming in the game, ranked 4th in Division One. They get to the line over 20 times per game, so it's on a good amount of volume. They're elite. Arkansas kept the free throws down in the first half for Oklahoma, despite falling behind by 13 and still trailing by 4.5. Only 4 free throw attempts. Second half, 16 to get them to their number. And OU didn't miss. They were 14. They missed, but they were 14 of 16. They
Yeah.
made all 6 of those free throws in that stretch on those 3-point fouls. But it wasn't just that it was an atrocity of bad offense on both sides. After that, Arkansas started losing the 50-50 ball battles for the most part. And you saw Oklahoma get a few bizarre, easy scores out of the melees, just being the team that got to the ball first. And the spoils go to the ones that win plays and win moments, not just not even when it's ugly. There's still a winner in these ugly plays, and Arkansas didn't do enough of that. They did that against Georgia down the
Mhm.
stretch. In this game, they couldn't figure it out. And this is a team again. Let's be honest. Arkansas on the road in a week. You got a midweek off, a midweek bye. You're at Kentucky, a team that's going to be back at home at Rupp. A lot of emotion in the building. That can work either way. But I don't see. I mean, Arkansas's now best primary ball handlers with Boogie
Yeah.
Flandout. You saw how awkward they are.
Mhm.
DJ Wagner did have 5 assists last night, but man, he had a lot of deflected passes he tried to make that disrupted Arkansas's offense. Because I think he holds it a tick too long sometimes when he's thinking about where he wants to go next with it. The defense is kind of teeing off on him. Nelly Davis is not a ball handler and whatsoever. 18 points, we'll credit him there, but a rough shooting night for him. But I just don't see the pieces to go on the road and challenge. Let's not forget 1-6 start, 0-3 on the road. LSU, a bottom feeder. Arkansas had a chance there. But the other 2 road games lost by 24 at Tennessee, lost by 18 at Missouri. And most of the teams you're going to play are the quality of those teams are more comparable to those 2 teams than they're going to beat LSU. The point being, we may see a lot more of these lopsided defeats when Arkansas is on the road. And now the team has shown through 4 home games in league play, 1-3.
Mm.
So even though they may stay a little closer in these home games, they're not sparking victories. Just because they're on their home court. That's again, I'm not predicting Arkansas doesn't win another game. I'm saying I don't see a pathway for many more wins. If Arkansas got to 5 wins, I'm not going to say I'll be mildly surprised, but that's probably the most realistic landing spot for this team on the upside. That's the upside of things. And you had a couple of recruits in the house. We need to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
On hand for that game last night. What was a good time to do it because Oklahoma was a beatable team. Let's not forget the Sooners and Arkansas are very similar in net
Yep.
in the 50s range. OU now just inside 50 after that road win. This wasn't like a great team that Arkansas just checked up short against. This is a team that was 1-4 in league play when Arkansas was coming into the game was 1-5.
Yeah, yeah, really frustrating. A winnable game and one that you had to have just in terms of a team being in a similar stature in the SEC. And I think you hit the point that Oklahoma. It took them about I don't know 15 minutes of game time before they saw what you just saw, right? And they said this team doesn't have really any primary ball handlers, but it doesn't have more than one in DJ Wagner. And as a result, the whole second half, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw the majority of teams that have, capable athletic guards full court press the whole way because that's what Oklahoma decided to do. And, Oklahoma's flashed some of that during the season as well. But when you have the capability to challenge full court, what it does to Arkansas, who already struggles in half court sets, right? So now you have only DJ Wagner is capable of bringing the ball up. You saw the ball come into John L. Davis. He doesn't even put the ball on the floor. Motions DJ Wagner over. And you take an Arkansas team that struggles in the half court already, and now they're getting into their offensive motion, if you even want to call it that. Their offensive sets at 18 seconds on the shot clock.
Right.
And in the second half,
Yeah.
it just started to spiral in all of the wrong ways. DJ Wagner finally gets the ball across the court. He looks to the sideline. He gets the call from Cal. He looks to the right, waiting for a screen, and I'm sitting there on the baseline, and I'm looking up, and there's now not 18 seconds, there's 14 seconds on the shot clock, right?
Yeah.
And when you talk about a team that struggles already, putting them behind the clock, so to speak, in that way, I think that's a recipe you're going to see recreated by a lot of teams down the road as well.
And here's the thing about that. You mentioned it. It slows your offense down at minimum. You got a chance of getting a turnover. But on the other side, you can use opportunities like that to score in transition. But Arkansas just doesn't have enough skill and understanding how to play that way to make a team pay for pressing. So it's kind of win-win. Matchups are different in game to game. So you're not going to probably see every team employ the same things. But throwing a zone at Arkansas, three-quarter court trap, full court press, trapping the inbounder and then getting back, or the player that catches the inbound pass. And then if you don't get a turnover immediately, you get back. There's multiple ways to scheme it and slow Arkansas down a little bit. But in a grind game like this, I thought both games, the pace favored Arkansas at home. So they got one out of that. They didn't get the other. Both games really close. Interesting. Beckham Black, a 6'3" guard out of Duncanville, Texas, class of 2027. I've covered this young man, the younger brother of Anthony Black.
Yeah.
Not as big as AB, not yet. We'll see if he continues to grow. He's just a sophomore at Duncanville, but I've seen him play a lot in person. Has some similarities to Anthony Black, a better shooter. They're both great facilitators. They see all the pieces on the board moving around, and they just know how to connect everybody with their passing and make teammates better. That's something Arkansas is desperately missing right now, is a player that can make the guys around him better and make things easier. Boogie Fland had some success with that. There were just too many collective problems for one player to fix all of it, but you still need a guy like that. And I can promise you, Beckham Black, a sophomore in high school at that game last night, and I tweeted out the photo of him at the game. I reported the day before that he was going to be there. The Arkansas fan base was all over that notion. They love him because they love AB. I can promise you this sophomore in high school is watching that game last night going, I can help this team. I can help it right now.
Yeah.
Who I am right now, put me out there. I can help this team right now. This is what they're because both he and his older brother, they have a gift.
Mhm.
It's spoken through their play. It's not arrogance or anything they would verbally say, but they have a gift of their game is better than yours. Most times that's going to be the case no matter who they match up with because they're playing chess out there. And with the way they play and the understanding of how the pieces are moving on the board and how to make teammates better, how to make things simpler. And so you hope that your coaching staff from the top down can identify those kind of players, get the right pieces around them. This roster that was assembled from a individual talent standpoint was there, but we're seeing a lot of stuff that's missing. We can go through it all.
Mhm.
We have so many times, but at some point, just talking about a high school kid that's a 10th grader, I already see there's an advancement in his game that Arkansas doesn't show anywhere across the board right now with the personnel they got. And it was a bit of irony watching that game and thinking about a young man sitting in there watching it, thinking, I would have done this or I could do that. So putting Beckham Black on the spot here, turn the heat up on the burner,
Yeah.
throwing his name in there and speaking for him and what his thoughts were. But
I
he's a
love that.
baller, man, a
Yeah.
competitor, a winner, and I'm sure there was a lot going through his mind on, man, I'm ready for this.
You're about ready to reclassify him 2 grades, you know? Just
Yeah,
put
that's
him
me.
in.
That's me saying, let's get this guy. Well, again, I covered both of those players,
Yeah.
AB before he got to Arkansas, and certainly his season of the Razorbacks, and of course, I also cover the Pro Hogs, and he's one of the top
Mhm.
in year two, one of the top defensive players in the league in the backcourt. His spatial understanding, they have great spatial understanding. AB is not only a great on-ball defender, but he's got a big frame and he puts himself in spots where makes him a great help defender. Because if he's in the proximity of a player that he's not even guarding, their percentages are lower when they shoot when he's close to him.
Yeah.
They actually advanced stats actually tracks all these things, and it just tells you how smart he is as a player. Sometimes the little bitty details make a huge difference, and Arkansas needs more players that get that and can play that way, and maybe even overcome some of the teaching shortcomings up there, if there are any, just because of how good they are and what
Yeah.
they brought with them.
Yeah, I think it's a great point just in terms of, I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of shortcomings with this team, but I think Arkansas in a lot of ways, unfortunately, is kind of the poster child of you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have what you're describing, right, with just basketball IQ, the ability to run an offense, and that's where having a true point guard comes in, right? And I remember you and I were previewing the Tennessee game, and I was ranting to you about how much I love Zakai Ziegler, right?
Yeah.
And somebody hopped in the comments, and I think they were just having fun. They were trash talking, and ahead of the Tennessee game, and they said something along the lines of. Zakai Ziegler can't be that good. He's been at Tennessee for 4 years. If he was that good, he'd be in the NBA, right? And it's such a great example of having a true point guard like that, a guy that is not in it for his own scoring, is only in it to get after it defensively, to
Yeah.
run the offense, and understands every little intricacy of basketball. Yeah, the guy Ziegler is probably not going to be a lottery pick next year. Sure, he's played for
Yeah.
Tennessee for 4 years, but he is one of the main reasons, if you asked Rick Barnes, if not the main reason, that team is doing what it's done this year, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's a great example of guys like that. They might not necessarily be a McDonald's All-American. They might not necessarily be a five-star guy. In AB's situation, he was one and done. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but those players are so essential, and it's so clear that that's what this Arkansas team's missing.
There's no doubt. I mean, some guys are not going to be NBA players. That's a
Yeah.
different animal, a different game. Doesn't mean they can't be great in college.
Yes.
And Nelly Davis was a guy that, the NBA. He's well, we're seeing it now. I don't see an NBA player there, but the NBA also agreed with me before this season. I mean, he had a G League Combine invite. I'm not trying to knock the young man, but he's been a great college player up until this season, a great college player. And it's not like he was just at Florida Atlantic teeing off on mid-major teams. I mean, though he was on a Final Four team, was arguably the best player on that team. Came back and led the team in scoring. Filled the stat sheet a bunch of other places, and that team played a good chunk of high major teams, good high major teams, well regarded high major teams, and he was putting up numbers against those teams. So it's not like this guy hasn't been a great college player, regardless of if he's a player that the NBA covets.
Yeah.
So you made a great point there. You see player. I mean, look at Texas A&M, a team that's ranked and's got basically everybody back every year. Wait till the fourth. If he was an NBA guy, he'd be gone making his money. That's what all these players want. But doesn't mean he's not a great college player. Some of these other names we can throw out there. There's several examples in the SEC. Janai Broom's an interesting player in his own right because he's still around. Made his return yesterday. What a game that was against Tennessee. It's unfortunate because if you're an Arkansas fan, this is back-to-back seasons now where you're at a point where you're admiring what is in the league that you don't have.
Yeah.
You're kind of forced to look around the league and go, man, this is a really good league. Why aren't we part of what's really good right now? We're somebody else's win on the way to a big season. That's what Arkansas has become.
Yeah.
A W for someone else having a must win for everybody out there because they don't want to have a loss to Arkansas. That you don't want to be that program in any league. But as good as the SEC now is, it's a shame Arkansas is not what we thought they'd be coming into this season, a top 3 or 4-ish kind of team. I thought the individual pieces were there. I think we're seeing again all the problem areas. Chief among them, right up there at the top, is the lack of with attrition, and now you're down to an 8 rotation, just not enough players that could come in and impact a game, whether you've got an injury, illness, or 2 or 3 guys that are just having an off night. You need someone that's competent to come in and maybe mix things up a little bit. A guy like, I'll go back to it, Kamani Johnson wasn't always a top 8 or 9 rotation guy, but he was that 10th guy.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, I need a bowling ball. I need someone in there that's going to go in there and start playing by prison rules. And let's see if the refs are going to blow the whistle every time, and let's change the dynamic a little bit. Arkansas doesn't have that. They don't have, it's easy to see what Arkansas has. It's easier to scheme for. It's easier to game plan, and it's easier for someone like me, an armchair quarterback, to tear it all down when it's not going well. So I'll slow down and pump the brakes a little bit. But
no.
The other recruit that was in the house last night, something positive, is Isaiah Sealy. He's already committed
there
and
he
signed.
Is, yeah.
He was in the house again. Future Hog. You like to see that. Nolan Richardson, the Hall of Famer, the Arkansas GOAT in coaching, was in the house. I mean, this was an opportunity to, have a celebration beyond just the name dropping that were in the butts and seats, but get a win.
Yeah, that's also not to just keep belaboring the point. I just don't know really how else to approach it, but that was another part of what was disappointing. Is I texted Evan when I got to the game, and I was like, man, this place is juiced again. It was a great crowd, right? And so Nolan's there, you got recruits there, and it was amazing what one win did, right? And you had the opportunity to build on that, and that's why it's just disappointing from the fan base. And again, we can spin it a bunch of different ways, but that's just what it comes down to. And especially, I said it earlier, that game it wasn't won, but it was there for the taking. It was there for the taking for the beginning. Just should have been a win in general. But I just keep going back to 50-44. Oklahoma calls a timeout. The place is going nuts, whatever it might be. All for the taking. Just disappointing overall. Anything else you want to hit before we go, Kevin?
Yeah, I want to hit a few points here real quick.
Mm-hmm.
At Kentucky, at Texas, home against Alabama, home against LSU. In order, the next few weeks, couple of weeks or so, that's what you got.
Yeah.
I think the LSU game at home is winnable. I guess anything can happen in any of those other games. I just don't see a path for it. So 1-6 right now, Arkansas very well after these next 4 games. It's starting to feel like maybe 2-9 is the most reasonable expectation based on what we've seen. So just looking ahead a little bit, that's why I wanted to part with. I'm not going to full throat make a prediction. Arkansas goes 1-3 over the next 4 games. But I think that might be the most likely scenario.
You know what the next 2 games are?
Then they go on the road for Auburn and Texas A&M after that. So I stopped short of going there. Let's just do it. All right, let's do it. 1-3 plus those two, probably 1-5. So let's just do the math. That's 2-11.
2 and
And you're
11.
in the running now to supersede or not do much better than what Arkansas. I mean, 2
Uh,
and 14 under Pelfrey in 08, 09. It's got those feels. It's got them. Last year's team, after going 1-6, did manage to win 5 more games and get to 6-12.
yeah.
I don't know if this team, again, I said it feels like a ceiling might now would be to get to 5 wins.
Hmm.
But if had you won last night, I'd be singing, had Arkansas made 2 more plays down the stretch and won that game, it doesn't change a whole lot about what this team is, but it shows at least they found back-to-back games where they could get over the hump and find ways to win. Sometimes that's just all it is. It may not change all the other negative factors, but at least there's some notion that they can at least get over the hill. Right now, now that you're 1-6, Georgia feels like an outlier, not
Mm,
necessarily a trend. You beat OU last night, maybe there's a trend there. Maybe you've shown you can win these kind of games late. And yeah, you may take your lumps against some of the better top tier teams, but maybe you can cobble together a few wins, maybe spring a couple of upsets against true quad one, higher upper one. But you got to start making winning a habit to get that kind of momentum. And Arkansas has not made it a habit.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a one off right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And again, it's no secret this team is, in order to win games, is going to have to completely muck things up. It's going to have to be ugly, and
Yeah.
it's going to have to be a game that's in the 60s, which is a way to put yourself in games against Georgia and Oklahoma. That's a tougher proposition when you start talking about the Kentuckys, the Alabamas, the Auburns, the A&Ms of the world. And even last year's team, they got to 5 or 6 wins, but I mean, if I remember correctly, 2 of those were Missouri, right? A team that didn't win a game in conference. They got an LSU team down there. There's just not that. You got South Carolina at the end, who, by the way, has lost about 4 one-possession games in a row. It's not like the
And
Gamecocks
that's on the road.
are completely dead either, right? But it's hard to start picking out wins. It's tough. But Arkansas with a mini bye week here and then a big time trip to Lexington, a return to Kentucky for John Calipari on Saturday. That's going to do it for this week's Hog Hoops Report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll talk to you next week after that Kentucky game. More Picture Show coming up on the other side of the break.